Greetings, all. My name is Imani Evans Baskin. This is my third video in the My Truth series, and today I'm talking about living with chronic pain. If you follow me on at least Facebook or other social media, I've talked about my experience living with chronic pain. And just as a disclaimer, this My Truth series is just me sharing my experience, and in hopes that someone feeling siloed or isolated hears their story and no longer feels alone. Is also cathartic for me in sharing the experience. And yeah, so it's just my story, and everyone is different, and there are some people will have variations in their experience, but living with pain, period, is very challenging. Chronic pain means there's no real relief from the pain. It is the most abnormal experience, and I have been grappling with how do I explain what it's like to live in chronic pain to someone who has never had that experience, right? Like, what is that like? How do you really convey that? Because I do think it's so abnormal to the human experience to live in pain, in unrelenting pain, that it can be very challenging for people to wrap their mind around it, right? And people live in chronic pain for various reasons. You might have an accident, you might be living with a chronic illness. For me, the chronic pain was about having arthritis, osteoarthritis in my knees. I mean, I have arthritis in other areas, but it was presenting most significantly in both knees. And at the point in which I was bone on bone, and let me just say, with osteoarthritis, it is one of the inflammation diseases that is really different from everyone else. And someone could have stage 1 osteoarthritis and have more pain than someone with stage 4, so it just varies. And I'm gonna tell you, I used to teach aerobics and be in fitness, and I when I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my knees, which a lot of people experience, it was probably 2000. Actually, it was early. But they just told me, oh, you have inflammation. I was still teaching aerobics very actively, and they told me I had inflammation in my knee, but never used the A word. If she had said arthritis, I feel like I would have been a little more tender with the way I worked with my knee. Nevertheless, when I finally was told, you have a bone on bone situation, that was probably 2000, I want to say 2006. And I kept going to the doctor because I was having pain. It felt like I pulled something in my knee. It did not feel like arthritis. It wasn't I didn't feel it at the joint, and it felt like a muscle. And I was accustomed to pulling things, pulling muscles, and then using rice to heal, right? Rest, ice, compression, elevation. That's what we would do as in the fitness industry. And so I was doing that and not getting relief. So finally I went to a sports medicine doctor. And it's funny, I just tell this part because I literally went twice. And the second time he was like, because I kept saying, this is not arthritis. Like, I was thinking I'm too young for arthritis at that point. And, what are you talking about, arthritis? Because he was also saying, there's very little we can do about it at this point except take some pain medication. And it's degenerative, so it's probably going to get worse. And I wouldn't accept the diagnosis. And I actually went back to him 2 or 3 times after that, And he did x-rays. He showed me the x-rays. And by the third time I came back to his office, he was like, ma'am, you have arthritis. So don't come back here. So I began to try to figure out how to live with it. It took me a long time to realize I couldn't wear heels anymore. And over the years, from about that 2005 2006 period, it just got increasingly worse. It was really traumatic for me because I enjoy my femininity, right? And for me, that was expressed in wearing heels, and nothing, crazy, but I would wear, 2-inch, 3-inch heels sometimes. And there came a point where I just could not do that incline on my knee. But I want to go back for a minute because I thought about how to explain what chronic pain feels like to someone who's never experienced chronic pain. And this is what I came up with. You know how you get dressed to go out, or maybe you have a job interview and you get dressed and you get to the job interview, the people are awaiting you to come into the room, and you realize there's a giant rock in your shoe. You can't remove it, and you need to sit down and nail this interview. And you need to proceed walking around and so on and so forth as part of the interview with this giant rock in your shoe. You want to look like you don't have the rock. You want to act like you don't feel the rock, but you know that the rock is there and no one else can see it. That to me is exactly what living with chronic pain is like, except with the rock, eventually you get out of the interview, run to your car, run around the corner where no one can see you, and pull the rock out. With chronic pain, it is unrelenting. And we know the research says that chronic pain changes the brain. It is not normal to live in chronic pain. It is not normal to live in pain every single solitary day. It's just not. And I mean, over the years, as the arthritis progressed, and listen, we may think of arthritis as, basic, because a lot of people might deal with it. Everyone, again, is different, but arthritis is one of the leading causes of disability. So it's very serious, and you can have it anywhere, right? And once you have it somewhere, you probably have it in multiple places, the inflammation. But for me, my story is that I was probably 130 pounds larger than I am now. That was exacerbating the pain, was the weight, but it didn't cause it. And often I felt that way, because again, I was originally diagnosed with arthritis in my knees and started feeling the pain when I was teaching aerobics. There are athletes who have that experience, but I felt like everywhere I went to get relief for the pain from doctors, really just operated like the pain was my punishment for being overweight. And it was really, really exhausting trying to live in pain and advocate for myself in spaces where I shouldn't have had to advocate, right? So one of the things that living in pain did for me was it isolated me, because there were so many things that I made up stories about not being able to go to, reasons I couldn't go because I was in pain. Because when people look at you and you don't look like there's a reason for you to be in pain, but you are in an excruciating amount of pain, and I'm talking about bone on bone pain that I would feel going to the restroom, when I stood up, when I answered the door, when I cooked food. It was unrelenting. And at some point, as the years progressed and it progressed, I couldn't do my own grocery shopping. I couldn't change a light bulb. I was just in pain all the time. And the amount of energy it takes to mask the pain. Woo. I don't think I can adequately explain it. The amount of energy it takes to mask pain. Again, the research tells us it changes the prefrontal cortex. It impacts the prefrontal cortex and puts it on high throttle and eventually wears it out. And this is that part of the brain that affects your mood, your personality. I spiraled into a depression, which is pretty hard for someone who is in the business of healing, helping others in healing their depression and motivating others and inspiring others. And I tried everything. You know, the humorous part is I would tell people might see me limp one day when the pain was bad, and I would measure my pain every day. I'd wake up, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most painful, where are you, Imani? That's how I would wake up and start my day, because that determined what I was going to do for the day. You know, it determined what I was going to do. If I was at a 9, it was getting ready to be a low productivity day. And the frustrating part was my mind, my brain, my desire was to do a whole lot. But my body was just not in alignment. I had started processing myself as lazy, because, being hard on myself was, I must be lazy. Like, why won't I do these things? Why am I not, doing these things? And I had a friend tell me at one point, he said, you're going to have to use a different word to describe yourself because there's so many things you do. And if you are calling yourself lazy, then I'm going to have to come up with some way to describe myself as lazy. And I'm not about to do it because you're not lazy. And there was one period where I needed to take prednisone, which is a steroid for something else that was going on with my skin. And I had like a 10-day relief from the pain because that's what steroids do, right? And that relief from the pain showed me that I remember crying that day because I was like, oh, I'm not lazy, I'm in pain. I had experienced the pain for so long that I just assumed this change in my personality was just who I was forever. Up to this time, I mean, I would laugh because people would see me limp or be in pain and they go, oh, you should take turmeric. Have you ever heard of them? And I don't mean to make light of it, but if you live in chronic pain, trust me, you are in constant research all the time. I use all the things, and it's not that people shouldn't share them with you, but by the time I ended up having surgery, by the time I had surgery, I was on extremely high doses of MSM, glucosamine chondroitin, extra strength. I was on, fish oil, flaxseed oil, turmeric, cinnamon. Those are just the herbal things. I was also taking, I had bypassed the over-the-counter pain meds, did nothing. So I was on Tylenol with codeine, Tylenol 3s, popping them sometimes up to 3 times a day, depending on what I had to do for the day. It just was horrible. And I remember one day just being on the floor in the bathroom crying. Like, why is this my experience? Because I just didn't feel like a human being. I felt like a non-human being, especially when I go to the doctor and I'd be in tears and they'd say, well, if you lost weight, you wouldn't have pain in your knee. Okay, so let me see if I understand. If being fat makes you, the punishment for that is your brain gets to change and you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life? Really? Because how can I get to the gym and work out when I can't even walk to the door without narcotics and then still being in pain? Because remember that pain scale I told you on 1 to 10? Average was somewhere between a 7 and a 10. That was my average day. If I woke up and had a 6 day, woo, that was a good time. That was a good time. It just was the most horrible experience ever. As a self-employed person, I didn't really have quality insurance. And then also it was a catch-22. I couldn't get knee surgery because they wanted me to lose weight, and I couldn't lose weight because I couldn't move. It just was a vicious cycle. It wasn't until I got married, I was able to deal with the weight issue and ended up dropping 140 pounds. And then I had knee surgery. I still need to have surgery in the left leg, but I had total knee replacement in the right leg. And when I tell you, oh my gosh, when I tell you a complete new lease on life, and let me just say for people around people who have a joint replacement, it's not your knee, so it's not 100%. Again, everybody is different. I don't have exactly full range of motion that some people do. I can't bend on the floor in all fours. I can't sit Indian style anymore, but I can walk. And the first time I walked without remembering the walk, like, the first time I was like, I have to go to the car, and I didn't think about the actual walk to the car. That's when I knew that something was different. And it still took a year or so for my brain to adjust that I wasn't in pain anymore. I honestly, I don't think I am fully adjusted to it even now. I remember getting so depressed that I just got on the floor and I prayed, God. I wasn't suicidal from the standpoint of wanting to kill myself. I'm going to do another video about being suicidal at a different point in my life. But this was, I just wanted the pain to stop. So while I wasn't suicidal, I did have suicidal ideation in terms of feeling like, if I got hit by a car, okay, because I don't want to live in pain anymore. I didn't have the kind of insurance that would allow me to get a knee replacement. And even if I did, again, I had the other issue, the prohibitive issues preventing them from doing the surgery. It just was a nightmare, and I thought there was no relief. I couldn't go to the grocery store. Everything became expensive because I had to start having groceries delivered to me. I'd have to pay people to come change light bulbs, to get stuff off high shelf. I mean, it just was shame building, guilt building. It was horrible. If you know someone in pain, I would say the thing is, more than empathizing with the pain, to figure out, do a small task. Do a small task, because when you live in that kind of pain, it just changes you. If the person is different, understand that there is science around the fact that chronic pain changes the brain. It's not part of the design of the human experience to live in pain. The brain's job is to keep us alive and out of pain. You know, we develop very quirky coping mechanisms because the brain is consistently trying to find ways to keep us from experiencing pain. But when you are in unrelenting pain, and I feel grateful that mine could be relieved with surgery. Some people have fibromyalgia and other kinds of conditions that just have no relief, have no surgery. And it is a daunting experience. So if you are living in chronic pain today and you are watching this, know that I understand. I understand you, and it's not in your head, and you're not crazy, and you're not lazy, and you're not weird, and you're not strange. You're in pain. And you deserve to be pain-free. I chant and thank the goddesses every day that today I don't live in that kind of pain. That I can go to the store, walk to the car, walk to the bathroom, change a bulb. Going up a lot of steps still is very challenging, but nothing like what I felt like I got my life back. And not everybody has that opportunity who lives in pain. So if you live in pain today, know that you're not alone. Again, you're not weird, you're not strange. It's not all in your head. It's real. And you deserve to live pain-free. Again, my name is Imani. This is my truth. What's yours?